Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing, thirsty souls. Come, let us worship together. Today we're going to resume an old tradition here at Eastrose, and that is someone here in the congregation today is going to assist with lighting the chalice. And today it's Jean Wygant, who probably needs no introduction. She's been an active member for many years. And Jean is currently with the outreach, I think membership, and
an auxiliary member.
Auxiliary member of those committees. And today she is our coffee maker, so thank you. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. Thank you, Jean. Good morning.
Good morning.
They're so well trained here, Will. And good morning to all of you here in the chapel and online, including our sister churches in the cluster, Hood River, Pasco, and Y East. Welcome to Eastrose Fellowship Unitarian Universalist. Welcome to first-time visitors. We're very glad you're here. And welcome to George, who I met before the service, who used to come here, was a member, I believe, many decades ago, and is back here for, I don't know if it's just a visit or, but anyway, he's here today. So welcome back, George.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our speaker today is an Eastrose favorite, storyteller Will Hornyak. And because he's here so often, I'm not going to go into 5 minutes of introduction. You can look him up online. This is an important person. His talk today is entitled Emissaries of the Imagination, the Arts in Times of Environmental and Cultural Upheaval, which I would definitely say we are in right now, definitely. So, this is the point where we all take a minute to greet each other, those of us gathered here, and also for you online, we're gonna get up and wave hello right now. So, look at the cameras back by the clock. Hello, hello, hello. And then welcome each other here in the congregation.
Good to see you. Good to see you too. See you.
Hi, Miranda. I didn't get to meet you before the service, and I would have introduced you too.
Linda.
Welcome, welcome.
Hey, great to see you, Jan. Good to meet you. Richard, good to see you.
We always really enjoy that part of the service. And I enjoy this part where we acknowledge the lands where our fellowship gathers, and they're home now to widespread communities. These lands were the traditional village sites, and I believe they have the map up there at this time, of Multnomah, Wasco, Wishram, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other peoples who made their lives here. It's amazing when you look at the map to actually see where all those tribes were. It's wonderful. But we are the occupiers now of these lands where the people lived for many, many, many years. And in peace, may we share this land and honor one another. So we're going to have our opening hymn now. If you would please rise. We are going to sing Here We Have Gathered. It's number 360 in the gray hymnal, but I believe the lyrics are on the screen. Yes.
Here we have gathered, gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate. Day
Morning. Good morning. How are you? Good. I see nobody sat in the front rows here, you know. Typical. That happens a lot when I tell a story. Good. Well, I wanted to start out this story for all ages with a great story, a myth from the Nez Perce people, one of the great tribes of the inland Northwest. Their traditional home was the Wallowa Mountains, salmon, snake, and Clearwater rivers. And one of the reasons I like to tell myths, especially at times of great difficulty and upheaval, is because myths are forged out of the most difficult times that human beings encounter. And so when we're in difficult times, myths can often offer ideas and strategies and ways of imagining how we can not just get through, but how we can dance with the reality of the day instead of running from it or fleeing from it or ignoring it completely. The Nez Perce say that in a long, 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 long ago time, a time so long ago that the animals could still speak and people could still listen. It was that long ago. In that time, there was a great monster, a huge beast, who was called Swallowing Monster. He was always hungry. And one day he was walking up into the hills and he looked down into the Snake River Canyon. And he saw all the fish, all the swimming people had pooled together in one place. And he walked down and he picked all the swimming people up and ate all the fish. But he was still hungry. And now he went into the woods and he took deer and bear and muskrat and wolf and he ate all the four-legged people. But he was still hungry. They say there was only one thing he wanted: more. And now he took the ducks and the geese and all the birds and the flying people from the sky, and finally he ate and he ate and he ate until he had eaten everyone. Well, except for Coyote. You know Coyote. He sort of took that day off, you know. He was busy. He was busy downstream. He was playing in a waterfall. But you know, sometimes as you're playing, you start thinking, and Coyote, he was thinking, you know, hey, you know, if I tore this waterfall down, the swimming people could go upriver more easily. And the two-legged people, they'll be coming soon, you know, they'll need food. And so Coyote, he tore the waterfall down stone by stone by stone. And then he said, now swimming people, go upriver, swimming people, ha-ha, swimming people. No swimming people. And he looked around and said, no flying people. And he realized there's nobody here but me. And Coyote became curious, and so he walked upriver and he saw the huge tracks of Swallowing Monster. And as he was walking, Coyote was thinking, walking, thinking. And as he was walking and thinking, he saw pieces of flint. And he picked them up because with flint you can do what?
Make fire.
Exactly. He put those into his pouch, you know. And he kept walking, and the next day he passed some stone called obsidian. And with obsidian you can make what? Arrowheads, knives. And Coyote made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sharp stone knives, and he hung those from his belt and he kept walking. And then he passed by a big fir tree and he gathered a big ball of pitch and he put that into his pouch, you know, and he kept walking and walking and walking. And one day as he was walking and walking and walking, he looked up and up and up and up and up. Swallowing Monster was pretty big now. They say he had 1 foot in what is today called Oregon. 1 foot across the Snake River in Idaho. His butt was sort of in Washington. Sorry about that, Washington. His tail rolled all the way out into Canada. He was big. But you know what Coyote's like, right? He just walked up and said, hey you! You! Swallowing Monster. Yeah, you. You better give back all the people now, or I'm gonna swallow you. Swallowing Monster picked up Coyote and just swallowed him down in one gulp. And he fell down. And he was deep in the belly of Swallowing Monster now. It was so dark down there. But Coyote groped about, you know, he was thinking, and he found a stick. And then he remembered the pitch. Remember the pitch? And he took the pitch, he put it on the stick. And then he took the flint and he made sparks and he lit the pitch and he made a torch. Ah, he could see everybody else down there with him now. And someone said, hey, look, it's Coyote. Coyote got here. Hey, Coyote, how can all of us get out of the belly of swallowing monster here? And Coyote said, well, I don't know. I came that way. Maybe we could go up, or maybe there might be another spot and we could take a look over there. And, you know, how about if we, and then we could, you know, I don't know. But I am kind of hungry. Is there anything to eat? People said, eat. Oh, Coyote, you're always thinking of your belly. How can you think of food? And he said, I don't know, but you know, I think a little better if I have something to eat. Anything would do. Isn't that the fresh piece of liver hanging up there? He took one of the knives. Remember the knives? And he reached up and he cut off a little piece of meat. With the torch, he made a cooking fire, and soon Coyote was roasting fresh meat on the fire, you know. And you know what it's like when you smell fresh meat cooking, you know. Pretty soon people gathered around. They realized they were a little hungry. And pretty soon Coyote, he was cutting. He served liver and tripe and heart and tripe and liver. He cut and carved everything away. And the people, they were talking and they were feasting, you know, and they were thinking, and everyone had a good time except for swallowing monster. Smoke came out his ears, out his mouth, out his nose, out all the openings, and finally he fell, and he didn't get up. But everybody was still trapped inside. And Coyote said, now we don't have much time. Quickly, because many, many people had already died. Swimming people had died, four-legged people had died, flying people had died, and bones were scattered everywhere. And Coyote said, now quickly, gather the bones of any who have died and run. You go this way, you that way, you this way, now go. And the people did, and they fled, and some of them, they got out through swallowing monster's ears. They went out that way. Some opened his big mouth, and they got through the sharp tongue, the sharp teeth. And some they had to go out the back, you know. And the last one to get out was Muskrat. He was always the last to do everything. But he opened up the back there. Oh, hi, here's where everybody is. I'm coming too. And he climbed out, but when he did, swallowing monster closed hard on his tail. And when he finally pulled himself out, the fur came right off of Muskrat's tail. And if you look at Muskrat today, you'll see it still has no fur on its tail. When everybody escaped, Coyote said, now, bring me the bones. Bring me the bones of all who have died. And there was a huge pile of bones. But Coyote was a rememberer. He remembered everything. He remembered everyone. And he was able to remember all the bones of the swimming people just as they had once been. He remembered all the bones of the flying people and the four-legged people. And finally, he took his last knife and he carved up swallowing monster. And they say when he sprinkled some of its blood upon those bones, just like that, flying people and swimming people and four-legged people, everybody came back to life. And so Coyote took the pieces of swallowing monster and he cast them north and south and east and west. And the Nez Perce, they say wherever any of those pieces landed is later where the two-legged people came to live, which is maybe why there's still a little bit of swallowing monster left in all of us. Let's thank the Nez Perce for that story.
Okay, now for something completely different. We're gonna move on to offering, and I have a reading by Naomi King. We know there is great abundance in our world, a great abundance of suffering, of people homeless, hungry, frightened, lonely, in danger, sick, exhausted, and wondering when this abundant suffering shall cease. We know there is great abundance in our world, a great abundance of love, of people caring, building homes for those who need them, feeding folks who hunger, comforting folks who are frightened, inviting folks who are lonely into company, creating peace and safety zones, healing and being with the sick, and welcoming the weary to a place of rest. We are the people of abundance, people who have known suffering and will know suffering. We are the people of abundance, people who have known love and offer our love as a blessing to our world. As we receive disappointment, anguish, and anger, we transform those curses into the blessings of hope, joy, and love. As we offer those blessings to this world, so our blessings increase. The smile of gratitude eases our hearts. The dance of joy sweeps us into the circle. And the light of this chalice changes our world. We are the change we wish to see through what we give. What change will you bless this world with today? Here at Nadaka, we share, got ahead of myself. Here at Eastrose, we share half of our offering with a community nonprofit that we support, and this month it is Nadaka Park. If you're attending online, you can donate by visiting our website and clicking on the donate button, or you can scan the QR code on the screen, which will take you to our donation page. This morning's offering will now be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship. Okay, and now Mary will place the heart stone in there for all of those joys or concerns that were not shared aloud but are held within our hearts. And now if you'll please remain seated, Mary is going to teach you the gathering song that she wrote. Copies are on the seats in every row, and Mary is going to give you a few instructions right now.
And this song has 2 verses. It's something I wrote for the First Church evening services over 20 years ago. And so it used to be called Evensong, that's why it's crossed out. And then I changed the word on the first line to say either the close or the start of the day, so we can use it anytime. I'm going to play the first verse, and we'll sing along. And then I'm going to play the second verse, and you'll learn the descant. And then we're going to go back to the beginning, and everybody will sing the first verse. and then you'll split in two, and some of you will sing the descant, and some of you will sing the lower part, which is exactly the same as the first verse melody. So let's try the first verse then.
Well, was swallowing monster sufficiently gross for you, or should I? I know. When I ask that to fifth graders, they all say, no, no, no. You know, come on, try harder, try harder. You know. One of the reasons I love that story, though, well, there's several reasons. One is that you notice a coyote is always hungry, right? They say coyote's always hungry and horny, basically. And too much appetite, as swallowing monster displays, is a problem. We become ravenous. You know, the only thing we want is more. And of course, we live in a society, in a world where we're constantly consuming and eating and devouring, you know. Too little appetite is also an issue. Because you know, when coyote falls into the depths there, the people say, oh, coyote, how can you always think of food? But that's what they need. They've lost their appetite for life. And so that's one of the things in difficult times. We sometimes get numb. We sometimes forget how important it is to eat, right? To celebrate, to think, to be together, to build community. And that's in part Coyote's genius. He lives in part through his instincts, you know. So at such times, don't forget our instincts, our appetite, our desire, our love of life. And Coyote is always somebody who gets something cooking, you know, which I think is another thing to consider in difficult times. Keep cooking things, keep things moving, you know, keep creative. And also, he says at the very beginning, they say, what should we do? And he says, you know, I don't really know, right? Which is a great thing to say, because a lot of times we don't. I don't know, and that opens the door for something else. I don't know, but I know I'm hungry, right? I can at least eat and prepare food for people. So I want to look today at some of the uses of the values of the arts, whether it's poetry or drama, storytelling, music, dance, in meeting difficult times. And I was searching for an image online for today, and I came across this beautiful picture of the Sufi dancer here. It's a whirling dervish. How many are familiar with Sufis or the whirling dervishes? Good, just about everybody is. Rumi was the one that founded the Sufi religion, which is considered sort of the mystical strain of Islam. And the dervishes, they spun because spinning was the nature of the universe. The galaxies spin, the earth spins, the planet spins. And they would usually have one hand out like this to the heavens and one hand out like this to the earth. And the idea being that we bring out of the infinite, the cosmos, we bring that into ourselves, and then we bring the blessings of that into the earth. But we're also the conduit to bring blessings from the earth into the cosmos too. And the Sufis weren't so interested in dogma. They were more interested in the practices of poetry and dance and mysticism. They wanted to have a direct experience of the divine. And it's interesting because in Turkey, in Istanbul, the Sufis, the dervishes are not allowed to dance in the mosques, right? They have to dance in their own private places. And so they're sort of outlawed by the greater Islamic hierarchy, but they've influenced millions of people around the world through the joy of their dance. And when I saw this beautiful picture, some words came to me, a poem. Wherever you are, dance. Music will find you. A rhythm will fill you. The sky will draw near. Birds will applaud you with the flapping of their wings. Passers-by will stop and they will gaze, and they'll remember some Roomba that they forgot long ago. Whoever you are, dance. The soles of your feet will stir the soul of the world and will awaken the beauty sleeping within. Whatever you are, dance. The galaxies will spin you. The galaxies will spin you. Starlight will find you, and the heavens will fill your outstretched arms and lift your flowered face to the sun. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you are, dance. So some words that were inspired by this beautiful photograph. Now, I think one of the things I love about this thing about dance is that, this great Sufi, this dervish, is just dancing in some square somewhere. It doesn't matter where you are. And it doesn't matter if you're any good at dance, that's not the point, right? It's just to move. It's just to get things moving. And I was listening to a great teacher of mine many years ago, Malidoma Somé. He was a man from Burkina Faso in Africa. He was a tribal elder. I passed away just a year ago. But he said almost every month their whole village would get out and dance. And from the youngest of the young to the oldest of the, everybody would dance. And the youth had their own style, the old people had their own style, but everybody danced together. And he said it was this beautiful ritual of celebration and of healing and of community making. Right? And they would go all night long. People would rest and then they would get up again and dance. But the idea was just to be together in motion and in movement. And part of it was beauty, part of it was entertaining, part of it felt sacred, and part of it was a healing practice. So his idea was to do this on a regular basis. Another thing too is that dancing, especially together, it builds the roots of community. And here at Eastrose, you have a wonderful community. And I know that the other Unitarian fellowships are around too. And especially at difficult times, the roots of community are really essential. And one of the metaphors I like to think about at these times is, in the old days in the Midwest, when they had these huge prairie grasses that were 6, 7 feet tall, sometimes fires would come and they would burn away all the grasses. Big wildfires would come. But then, in not too much time, the earth would grow green again. Why? Because this incredible root system beneath the surface. You couldn't see it above, but beneath the surface, for over millennia, these roots had been twining together. And so I think the roots of community are essential at these times too. Because when things change on the outside, whatever, burn away or shift, And sometimes we don't know what's going to happen. But within, we have the roots of community. And that is something out of which we can create new forms, out of which we can build again. So dance being important. Second thing, poetry. And I want to read something from Garrison Keillor, the writer, about poetry. This is a book that I highly recommend. It's a compilation of poems called Good Poems for Hard Times. Well said. He put this together in 2005, not too long after 9/11 occurred. And this is just a little bit from his introduction. He said, the meaning of poetry is to give courage. A poem is not a puzzle that you, the dutiful reader, are obliged to solve. It is meant to poke you, to get you to buck up, pay attention, rise and shine. Look alive, get a grip, get the picture, pull up your socks, wake up, and die right. What really matters about poetry, and what distinguishes poets from, say, fashion models or ad salesmen, is the miracle of incantation in rendering the gravity and grace and the beauty of the ordinary world, and thereby lending courage to strangers. This is a necessary thing, because at times because life becomes almost impossible, and you curl up in a blanket in a dim room behind drawn shades. But it can help to say words. It can help to make poems. So I love this idea of the value of poetry. And there's a Irish poet who said something about poetry that I love, which was, poetry, it's utterly useless, really. You can live your whole bloody life without ever needing a poem. But it just might save your life. Right? And I love that, because both things are true. You can live your whole life without reading a poem or needing a poem. You can get through it, But that doesn't mean it's without value, right? And that's one of the important distinctions, is that some things are not practical, but it doesn't mean they're without value. Some of the most valuable things aren't ultimately what we would consider to be practical. And especially in hard times, those things are often what helps to get us through. I wanted to mention in relationship to drama, just last week, I watched the world premiere of a film called A Midsummer Night's Dream in Prison. And this is made by a group of people that I've worked with, Open Hearts, Open Minds, here in Portland. And the man who started is Johnny Stallings. And he went to Two Rivers Prison in Umatilla, Oregon, and worked there for 10 years. At first just doing dialogue groups with prisoners that wanted to get together. But then he started doing Shakespeare in prison. And it was an amazing experience. Anyway, one of his friends, a woman named Bushra Azuz, a very talented filmmaker, she saw what he was doing and went and took 70 hours of film as they produced Midsummer Night's Dream. That was their first play. And they did this for like 5 or 6 years. But the beauty of it, and why I bring it up, is how drama and how theater and how the arts can change perspective. Now, if we're thinking of the power of the arts in difficult times, it's good to go into difficult places to see what works. And what place is more difficult than being in prison? It's rough, right? But the beauty of this film is it showed these prisoners who were playing the parts of kings and princes. Some of them were playing princesses. Some of them were playing, bards and poets. And they got to see themselves as entirely different people. They were no longer just men in prison that had committed a crime and were serving time, right? Now there was something totally different. And they began to see themselves differently. Whole other aspects of themselves and their expression came out. Not only that, but during the play, they interacted with one another, so they saw their colleagues differently. And when you watch the film, it's just so absolutely touching, the power of playing a role, the power of putting on a play. And I was at one of the productions that they did in the prison, and after the show, all the actors sat up on stage. There was a talk back, question and answer, and they talked about the power of the theater production had upon them. Not only that, but there were their own family members and friends in the audience. And you would get women standing up and weeping and just saying, that's my son, I've never seen him do anything like this, but this was incredible, And time again, you could see how these roles that they played helped to shift their own perspective and make them actually, remember who they were. So this is true also of any type of, a role that we take on. I just wanted to mention, a couple weeks ago, I was doing a storytelling for a summer program up in Washougal, or near Washougal. And it was a group of about, 150 kindergarten through 6th grade kids, And so there came to be the part in the story, it's called The Firebird. It's a Russian story. And I said, so who could play this part of the Firebird? And a little girl, she's about 9 years old, she raised her hand. And I could tell she got up, she was a little chubby, and you could tell there was like a little snickering going on in the room, like, what's she gonna do, She got up there, and I said, in the story, I said, and the Firebird lifted its wings and flew up in the morning from behind the sky. And she closed her eyes, and she lifted up her wings, and she was the Firebird. And everyone just kind of went, oh, who is that? And we were all stunned and just amazed in a beautiful way, because suddenly, just through this little mask of a role, she was able to find something in herself that was truly herself, right? An essence of herself that she probably hadn't accessed before. And the beauty of it was that everybody got to see her a little differently, and she got to experience herself a little differently too, right? One of the great Irish poets, Oscar Wilde, once said about theater, he said, the only time he was really himself was when he was on stage. All the other times in his life, he was just acting, Yeah. And so sometimes that's true. When we actually assume a role or upon stage, we become more of ourselves, So the importance of drama and theater. Well, when I wrote this poem a little while back, and I know many of us we're just so tired of division and feeling at odds with one another, and blue states and red states and all this kind of stuff. I was just weary of it, and I wanted to write a poem about the future, And I wrote this poem, and Kim Stafford, who I correspond with sometimes, he wrote back, and he said, sometimes poets are called emissaries from the future. They go out to bring some future vision to the present, And so this is a little poem I wrote called Remember. Remember that day when the war ended, and you climbed from your trenches, and we oozed from our bunkers, leaving grenades and guns and bullets and bayonets behind. Remember how we all sang in the streets, danced in the fountains, crazy with joy. Remember how clouds lifted, hearts rose, hatred, vengeance, bitterness, and rage fell away like grave clothes. Remember how we stood tall and happy in the morning light, eyeing the world and one another with new eyes. Remember how in that ecstasy we forgot if ours was a red state or blue, liberal cause or conservative stand. Remember how easily we remembered who we were, from whence we had come, where we were going, why we were here, and what we should do. I'll never forget that day when the war ended and trust sprouted and spread like a green sea of grass across every divide, over every division, into one state, uniting all into one state of grace, indivisible, at peace, under heaven. So that just came to me of just out of weariness of all the division and the turmoil, that we've been through. Well, I know this will surprise you, but I also wanted to talk briefly about the importance of story in difficult times. All right? Would that be okay? Okay, good. I've told the story of Scheherazade here before. But just a brief reminder for those who don't know, Scheherazade was a legendary mythic storyteller who changed the fate of an empire by healing the heart of a sultan who had gone mad. And she did that by telling stories to him for 1,001 nights. You know, he had been betrayed by his wife, and because of that, he'd been reduced to what I call the mono-narrative. The only story he knew was his own pain and rage and bitterness. You know, and of course, pain and loss, illness can make zealots of us all, right? And there's an old saying that a zealot has only one story, and a wise person has many, many stories. So that's what Scheherazade attempted to do, is reseed his imagination with lots and lots and lots of different stories. So that's one of my ideas about the importance of story now, is to have lots of stories, lots of ideas, to keep imagination wide open, because we can see the narrowing of consciousness now in our world. You know, the rise of fundamentalism. There's only one story, it's the truth, and I have it, you know? No. There's many, many, many stories to pay attention to. So one of those that I think is relevant these days is that in the Greek pantheon, one of the oldest goddesses was Mnemosyne, and her name actually means memory. And Mnemosyne got together with Zeus, and between the two of them, they got together for 9 nights, and they created 9 daughters as a result. That's what gods and goddesses can do, I guess, you know. And 9 daughters, and in all of those were the muses, you know, the muses of the world. And the muses, of course, those are the goddesses of music, of story, of poetry, of drama, of painting, architecture, right? Of course, our word amusement comes from the muses. Museum comes from the muses, right? And so the 9 daughters of the muses were connected to the goddess of memory, which is one of the reasons why the arts are important. They help us to remember, right? Just like the little girl playing the Firebird remembered some essence of herself, right? Just like the prisoners doing Shakespeare remembered something about themselves that they had forgotten. And being human beings, we tend to forget, and arts and those practices help us to remember again, to remember lost parts of ourselves. Well, the first of the muses, her name was Calliope. And she was the muse of epic poetry or storytelling poetry. And she got together with a mortal man, a king of Thrace, and they had a son whose name was Orpheus. Anybody heard of Orpheus before? Yeah, a few of you have, right? Orpheus was gifted, I mean in part because his mother was a goddess. He was gifted with a beautiful voice. He was a singer. He was a poet. But one of his greatest gifts was he played the lyre. You know, the little stringed harp. He played it beautifully. And he played so well that he was invited. His father was the king of Thrace, and so as a young prince, he was invited to this home and to that home, and he traveled all about the kingdom of Thrace and playing. But when he was about, 13 or 14, his father said, Orpheus, you know, this lyre, this poetry, this is nice, but you're going to be a king. And you know, kingdoms are not ruled and not made by sweet poems and songs. They're made by laws, they're made by engineering, they're made by architecture, they're made by war and strategy. And so Orpheus, we're going to send you away to be educated in all those things. So they sent Orpheus away to Egypt, which in those days was kind of like going to Yale or to Harvard, I guess, you know, to be educated. And he was educated. He learned theory, he learned strategy, he learned architecture, he learned all those things that a king needs to know. And of course, he was introduced to many other princes and also the people of royalty that had sent their children there. But he missed what he loved most, which was the lyre and poetry and song. But when he came back, he was immediately contacted by a sea captain who was about to go on a voyage. His name was Jason. How many have heard of Jason and the Argonauts? Yeah, you all have, right? And they were going off to find what? Remember the golden fleece, right? Which was a ram's skin, but it was a magical, special ram skin. The one who wore it, the one who could find it, recover it, would be granted the mantle of kingship. But of course, it was a long way away. It was a difficult voyage. And so Jason got together the Argonauts, which were the best crew of heroes you could imagine. Hercules was part of it. Castor, Pollux, all of these were great champions. But he invited Orpheus to come along too. And Orpheus had been trained now in warfare, and so he came, brandishing swords and shields and all that kind of stuff. And he got on the boat, and Jason said, Orpheus, I know you can wield sword and shield, but that's not why I called you here. He said, these are the greatest champions of the world, and they will fight courageously against all enemies, and they'll fight even more among themselves. Right? Because they always want to be the strongest and the best and the brightest and the first. What I need you for is for your poems. I need you for your music. I need you for your lyre to help us to work together. Some of you might have heard the term shantyman. In the days of wooden ships and great sailing ships, they had men that were experts at singing songs to get the men working together, right? Hoisting sail, rowing boats. And they said one good shantyman was worth 10 crew. And that's in part what Orpheus was. He was a shantyman to help them work together, but at night he also would play the lyre and sing songs of home, and they would remember their quest. They would remember who they were. They would remember their bond of friendship. Time passed, a couple of years passed, the great voyage was made, the fleece was found, but on their way back, the men were weary, they were wounded, they were tired, and now they had to go through the most difficult part of the journey. It was passing through these narrow straits on their way home. And the seas were wild, the winds were heavy, and worse than that, there were the sirens. You know the sirens, right? Absolutely beautiful, gorgeous women with these incredible voices, but in some traditions they were considered to be devouring carnivorous birds, right? So they would woo you close by into destruction, and then you were theirs. However, their song was so beautiful, and they played the harp, right? And they were bare-breasted and wore robes, and these men heard the singing of the sirens. Now Jason, the captain, he had warned them, he had told them, don't even think about going in that direction, right? There's steep cliffs, there's wild waves, it'll definitely be our destruction. But of course, the men, upon hearing these voices, they hadn't known any tenderness or sweetness in a long, long, long time. And the sirens wooed them and said, come, come, come and just rest and you can be on your way. And of course, they tied Jason to the mast and they turned the rudder and began to sail right towards these cliffs, right? Sailing right into their doom, Just as they were headed that way, Jason knew not what to do, but he called for Orpheus. And he said, Orpheus, take lyre, sing the songs of home that you can remember. And Orpheus went to the front of the ship and took the lyre. And because everything was at stake, he played like he had never played before. And it was almost as if a song, as if a sound was emanating from the seas, from the ship itself, into the bones of the men. He sang, and as he sang the songs of home. He sang the songs of those people that they missed. And as they heard those songs, they began to remember who they were, where they were bound, how much they missed their home, how much they missed the people that they had been away from. And eventually they say that it was the song that changed their hearts. And when their hearts changed, the rudder of the ship began to turn. And they narrowly avoided the cliffs, made their way through the straits, and all the way home. And in that way, Orpheus, through music and song, saved the day. Now, one thing I love about that is that sometimes words aren't enough. Logic isn't enough. Jason could talk till he was blue in the face. Don't go there. You'll die, okay? Listen to me. I know better. But when people are war-weary and wounded, they just want what they want. Right? But Jason, and this is what I love, sometimes it's the music, sometimes it's the sound of something that changes our heart. Because when our emotions turn, when our feelings change, then the rudder of the ship changes, we go in the direction often that our feelings go. And this is in part the power of the arts too, to touch our feelings in a deep way, beyond our ideas, what we may believe or what we may think. Do you remember the rest of the story of Orpheus by any chance? What happens when you get home? You want to hear the very end? Okay. I'll cut to the chase because it's a long story, but he goes home, his father has died, so he becomes king of Thrace now. And of course, he's war-weary, he's been wounded, he's tired, but he has to be the king. And the only joy he gets is by taking his lyre, and he loves to go out in the rocky hills of Thrace, a beautiful part of northern Greece. And there he plays the lyre. And he sings out his grief and his despair. And there's one place, a beautiful sacred grove of 7 oak trees that he loves to go to. That's his favorite spot. And often as he plays these oaks, right, they will kind of dance in the breeze. And one day these oaks decide, because they love Orpheus, to reveal their true shape to him. And these are actually forest nymphs. These are beautiful women who dance and sing as he plays. And one day one of them comes forward and says, Orpheus, please come, come again. And of course he does. And eventually he goes to this forest nymph whose name is Eurydice. And he says, please don't return to the form of a tree. Become my wife. Come to my home and wed me. And she agrees. And she comes. And the people are so glad because Orpheus, although he's been a great king, has been lonely. And finally he has a love. And they're so happy they're going to have a queen at long last. And these are the people of Thrace who worship Dionysius, so they know how to party, And they have a little bit of wine out there, and they're ready for a great feast, and they're so happy. But right in the middle, as they're preparing for the wedding, Eurydice is up there dancing with her sisters. They decide to do one more naked dance in the meadows before she gets married. May we all have an opportunity to do at least one naked dance in the meadows. I think it'd be good for everybody, especially Congress. Just put them out there in the meadow and dance naked for a while. Anyway, the sad part is that they have this wonderful dance, but then there's this drunken beekeeper who comes through the forest, right? And he sees these nymphs, and he's so taken by them, he runs after them. And he chases Eurydice, and she's easily able to outpace him. But she turns back to see where he is, and she doesn't notice what's right in front of her, which is a huge venomous snake. And she steps on it, and it leaps up and bites her in the thigh. And she falls down. And the nymphs, the forest nymphs, her sisters, run down and bring Orpheus back, but she is dead. And what was going to be a wedding is now a funeral, and Orpheus brings her back. And in the middle of all the people who gather around, he cries out, no, 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 no. No, this will not stand. This is not right. I will find her. I will bring Eurydice back. And he goes into the temple and he prays to Hermes, he's the guide of souls. And he says, Hermes, you show me the opening to the underworld. I will find Eurydice and I'll bring her back. And Hermes says, not a good idea. Not a good idea. But Hermes helps, and he shows Orpheus the gateway to the underworld. One thing I love about this particular story is that as well as people of ascent and vision and consciousness, we're also people who need to descend. We are at times people that need to drop down, to know grief and to know darkness and to know difficulty and to know how to wend our way through. The only thing Orpheus brings with him are his poems, his songs, and his lyre. That's all he has. And right near the entrance to the underworld, no mortal, anybody living is not allowed to go. It's only the dead. So he is completely forbidden to enter, but he does. And there's this huge 3-headed dog named Cerberus. Anybody ever heard of him? Always hungry, right? And he just tears things to pieces if they don't belong in the underworld. And word comes to Hades, the lord of the underworld, that somebody has ventured forth into the underworld. And Hades says, well, certainly by now Cerberus will have torn him to bits. And they say, well, actually, Hades, Cerberus is laid down and is licking his hand. Okay? Because Orpheus has this kind of effect upon people. He eventually finds his way all the way down to the underworld. And he comes before Hades, and he begs for the return of his wife. And Hades says, you arrogant mortal. He says, never Has any soul been returned? And it will not happen now. And Orpheus, he says, allow me at least to sing one song to my bride, because our wedding was never consummated. At least allow me that. And Persephone, the wife of Hades, says, allow that. Allow him one song. Well, he takes the lyre, and all of his aunts, who are all the muses, they conspire to help him. And the song that comes from him, is like something never heard before. It changes the very air of the underworld. You know, the Furies, the women that mete out all the punishments, they put their whips down. Sisyphus stops rolling his stone up the hill. All the forges stop. People turn, and they can't believe the beauty of the song. And even Hades, they say, cries a tear. It's a tear of black tar, but it's a tear nonetheless, you know. And finally, all are stunned by the beauty of the singing. And Persephone turns to her husband Hades and says, allow it, just this one time. And he says, I will allow you to take Eurydice if that's her desire to go, but you have to go out and not look back. You must trust that she's behind you. And so he does, and the way out is much more difficult than the way in. And of course he doesn't know if she's behind him. And just as he gets to the entrance out of the underworld, the light comes pouring through, and he's so happy to see the light. What's he do? He turns, you know, and he gasps. But she's right there, and he reaches for her, and just like that, she begins to dissolve back into spirit form. And he runs after, and now Cerberus, he just comes right for him. And Orpheus is forced out of the underworld, and as he leaves the underworld, the great stones just close, and no amount of playing the lyre or the poetry or the songs will help him. Eventually he gets back to Thrace, and there's a number of versions of what happens next, but in one of them, the Maenads, who are the followers of Dionysius, they come upon him, and he's already torn apart in soul, inside and out, and they tear him limb from limb. They cast his body and his harp and his head into the streams. The streams carry all that to the oceans. And the muses, they see the harp, and they take that, they raise it up into the heavens. You can see it today as the constellation of the Lyre up in the heavens. His head they take and put into a cave. It becomes a great oracle, and people go there to listen to the wisdom of Orpheus. But his soul returns to the underworld to be with Eurydice, where it remains to this day. So, a happy little tale about Orpheus. The reason I say that is that to some extent, I believe we are going through a great world initiation. It's happening in so many different ways. Everywhere you look, there's destruction, there's upheaval, there's chaos, and there isn't one answer or one person or one nation that will do it. It's got to come from many, many, many people. And just as I think we're in difficult times, one of the natures of difficult times, if we can stay with them, dance with them, is they will draw from us our gifts and our medicine. Everybody is unique. Everybody is necessary, right? And so that's part of the question, is that what medicine do I carry for these times? Because I believe we're in these times for a reason, you know. We each come into this world, I think, seated with a story, with something to do, right? And so these are difficult times, and yet they're the times that we're also meant for and made for. And so one of the reasons I wanted to talk today is because some of the tools and some of the practices that are useful are the arts that we depend upon. So I wanted to finish with a little poem and then open it up to questions or comments. Is that okay? You still with me? All right? Okay. Good, good. Thank you. By the way, I wanted to just thank all of you for attending and for the invitation to be here. I really am honored to come to Eastrose Fellowship and to have other fellowships online out there in Zoom land. I wrote this poem. I came across this quote many years ago by the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was a brilliant rabbi. Baal Shem Tov means a rabbi of the good name. He lived from 1698 to 1760. And his quote is this: "When the bonds that hold heaven and earth together are strained to the point of breaking, God hears only those words spoken from a broken heart." Right? And so although we don't necessarily like to have a broken heart or like to be in a place of despair, is that at times like that, to be able to be there and to speak from that place, it can be helpful. Above the fires devour the prairie grasses. Deep roots intertwined over millennia below can return green life in time to the charred earth. Our work is not only of clarity and light, ascent and vision, but of gravity and grief, descent into darkness, to follow the flow of our tears to the ancient forgotten place of our common roots, our shared tongue, our silent communion, which is never far from where we are. William Butler Yeats said, "Things fall apart. The center can no longer hold." America, Egypt, Europe, China, Persia, Mesopotamia, all were strange outposts at the edge of the world before they became centers of the world. The edge is where change and hope always dwell. Noah building an ark nowhere near water. The Buddha sitting beneath the Bodhi tree. John the Baptist in the wilderness ranting, eating locusts and wild honey. Rumi whirling in circles and reciting poems to abashed scholars. Saint Bridget of Kildare brewing ale and saving souls. Yeats is right. The center can no longer hold, save for that center, that sacred mountain, Bodhi tree, New Jerusalem, Valhalla, or Tirnanog within ourselves. So, thank you for listening, and I'm always interested to know where any of this lands with you. If there's any comments or questions or anything like that, we can have a little bit of a discussion for a while, if you'd like to do that.
When you were talking the part about poetry, I suddenly flashed on, well, and actually you were reading the poem from Garrison Keillor. I had the opportunity to see him back in Maryland many years ago, and it was in a church, and so it was a very intimate setting, and all he did, it wasn't his song and dance show, it was poetry. It was just all an evening of poetry. It wasn't just him, it was other people, but he ended the evening with Casey at the Bat.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just, I mean, and all of these poems were done without notes, nothing, and it was just, you were transformed. I mean, you were there.
Yeah.
You were there. You were someplace else. Just the power of the words and the way he said and everything. It's just, you know, I really appreciate all of the things you were talking about today.
I think that's a good point on what you're saying. We were just someplace else.
Yeah.
And that's in part, of course, what the arts do. You know, the old saying, every day sing, dance, tell stories, be silent. Those are the thresholds into the other world. And you know, if we don't visit that other world on a regular basis, we can get pretty tired, you know. And that's the idea of using the arts, is to becoming refreshed, bringing new ideas back from that place into this world to reinvigorate it. So.
I'm not quite sure how this will come out, but I come to Eastrose week after week, and it's a sort of intellectual and Christian and polite and pale, and I'm hungry all the time. And I want to thank you for bringing Orpheus and Coyote. I don't hear about them, and they're muscular, and they're strong.
True, yeah.
And
Yeah. That's true.
oh, I need this.
And all of us, we're all recovering Christians here, I think, probably. Neo-pagans or something, or who knows what we are, really. But not to lose that. Because in part, the beauty of the dance and Coyote is the physicality of our being. We are human beings. We're on the earth. We're rooted in the ground. And not to lose sight of that. And also the body has great instruction for us. The body is a great communicator. The body of the earth as well. That's one thing. To actually be in nature and to listen to it rather than to try to change it or make something out of it, just to be there. Nature can communicate a great deal to us. And of course we live in a world, especially in Western culture, we haven't listened to nature so much. We've been rather intent upon making something of it rather than having nature maybe make something of us.
It is a rather serendipitous reflection that you gave, because one of the themes that has come upon me repeatedly at this point in my life is just reiterations of the phrase, remember who you are, and if you don't know, figure it out already. And
if you don't know what,
figure it out already.
That's right.
And that the logic part of the brain, the empiricism can only go so far. Mm-hmm. And I have so over-relied on it for so long that I'm not sure how to tap into all that other stuff. But your demonstration of how a lot of us can be found there, actually helped a lot. So thank you.
I hear you. I know the same experience. But I think one of the reasons that we have things like today is that if we do dance without worrying about what it looks like, if we just dance, if we just sing, act, whatever, write, we'll find our way back. And that's why I think the muses are connected to memory. You don't have to go far; they're right here. It's just that our perspective needs to change. It's like I love the Jason and the Argonauts. They were so intent upon sailing into the cliffs. And I think we're kind of sailing into the cliffs as a world right now. Like, oh, it looks so beautiful. We know. But what is a song that might emanate from us? What is our deepest song? To define that. So.
I'm going to have to cut you off now, or we're going to lose folks.
Thank you so much, everybody.
I want to get this to you before I forget. Yes.
And this is why we have him back all the time. Okay? And I've already asked him for coming back in a few months. Yes. Okay, our closing hymn today, if you'd please stand to sing, it's number 347. If you want to look in the hymnal, it'll be on the screen. Gather the Spirit. Most of you know this one.
Thank you.
Jean, if you would help me with the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not its meaning and mission in our hearts. Our time together has come to an end. Go in peace, be in service to one another, and may you move through the world in love for all of your days. And I'm honored to give a benediction today. This is by Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace. Amen. Blessed be. Namaste. Unitarian service I ever went to was a jazz service, and I thought I was just going to, a regular type church service. Well, there was a jazz combo up there, and that's all the service was. And next thing I know, people are up dancing in the aisles and in their chairs, and I'm going, this is a weird church. But a good one. I'm still here. Okay, some announcements. I have a lot of thank yous. Our technical wizards in the back, our musicians, the people who bring the flowers, Jean for making coffee, Lois for greeting, thank you, Will, thank you, everybody. Also, I noticed that we're gonna need some more sign-ups for making coffee, for cleaning up. What's the other one? Flowers. And flowers, please. The sign-up sheet's right there in the hall. I also am happy to announce that we are bringing back potlucks on the first Sunday of each month, starting in September. So I'm starting to tell you now so you can start planning what you're gonna bring. Now, it's not next week, it's not till the first week of September. We are also going to start planning, or they've already started planning for the auction. And this year, the theme is, oh my gourd. Very clever. time for the Eastrose Fall Auction Festival. Save these dates. October 13th and 14th will be the online auction. And I remember that was a lot of fun. It was easy to sit there and bid, up on something you really wanted. And then Saturday, October 15th, there'll be a party here from 1 to 4 with raffle baskets, desserts, coffee, tea, and more. So you're going to hear a lot more about that. Also have an announcement from Lynn Pfeiffer, who has done a fantastic job of reorganizing our greeters. You know, all of this post-COVID is just slowly coming back together. You know, we returned a few new things today. Well, she's got some greeters lined up, because it's been only Bana holding down the fort all these months. And she wants to know if you'd like to be a greeter. They do have a small group put together, but they need some more, and it's really easy and fun. You know, you don't need a resume for it. So see Lynn Pfeiffer, who's right outside the window there, you all know her, for details. And then next week, speaking of poetry, Mr. Will, we are going to have a service called The Purpose of Poetry. And it's by Reverend Dr. Lynn Unger. And she is, it's going to be an online pulpit share from Mount Hood Unitarian Fellowship in Hood River. And you can either come in here and watch it on the screen if you want to be in company with your friends, or you can watch it from the comfort of your home. So you will see more about that in Petals, about how to sign on and all of that. And this now means our service has ended. If you're online right now, you can exit YouTube and connect to Cafe Conversations via Zoom. Those that are here at Eastrose are invited to remain, have coffee, which Jean made today, and visit. And we hope to see you all next week, and bring a friend.